The head coach search for the New York Giants is heating up, and they have scheduled 3 interviews. We're going to tell you about them as we take a deep dive into each and every candidate. But this is why you subscribe to the channel, because when news breaks, we get you guys a video ASAP, and we are closing in on 99.1 thousand subscribers, 39 real ones away. If you bleed Giants blue, hit that sub button right now. You're locked into New York Giants now by Chat Sports, and I am your host, Marshall Green. We're going to start with Vance Joseph, and we'll work our way down the list as the New York Giants are expected to interview the Denver Broncos defensive coordinator. Adam Schefter saying Broncos DC Vance Joseph is expected to interview, not just with the Giants, but with the Raiders, Cardinals, and the Tennessee Titans for their head coach vacancies. Who is Vance Joseph? Let's talk about it. Right now, he's a defensive coordinator for the Broncos. He's been there since 2023. His stop before that, he was the Cardinals defensive coordinator from 2019 to 2022. And before that, he was the Denver Broncos head coach in 2017 and 2018, and the Miami Dolphins defensive coordinator in 2016, with a lot of other stops prior to that. I wanted to focus in on the Denver Broncos defense over the last 2 years under the control of Vance Joseph. In 2024, they allowed just 18.2 points per game. A top 3 scoring defense, just like it is this year. So back-to-back years, the Broncos are allowing less than 18.5 points per game. The 14th best pass defense in 2024, top 7 in 2025. The second best run defense this year. Last year, they were number 3. They've been number 1 in sacks in each of the last 2 years. In 2024, they forced a lot of turnovers. They were the 7th best at that in the NFL. This year, not as good as when it comes to taking the ball away, but we cannot understate how good this Denver Broncos defense is, even though Jackson Dart walked into Mile High and hung 33 on their dome. Vance Joseph is a great defensive coordinator, and I do not say that lightly. He actually fits what I want in a defensive coordinator. Fast, physical, and aggressive. We saw that in that game against Denver. Yes, they are uber talented with Nick Benito, as well as Cooper and many other talented individuals. But this defense, they play fast. They get after the football. They have swag. They hit hard. And he is someone that loves to blitz and play mind games with quarterbacks at the line of scrimmage. I love that. At a defensive coordinator, Charlie Bullen, the current DC for the Giants, or the interim DC, he learned under Vance Joseph, and we saw some of that in the final games of the season. A great defensive coordinator. It did not go well for him, though, as the head coach for Denver, winning 5 of the 16 games in 2017, and then he went 6-10 in 2018. That was a long time ago, almost a decade ago, but it is still important. It did not go well for a lot of different reasons. One thing that I found interesting, though, was his defenses weren't even really all that good when he was the head coach for Denver. They allowed 23.9 points per game, the 22nd best defense in the NFL. They were top 13 in 2018 when they allowed 21.8 points per game, but you would like to see these numbers be a little bit better. Maybe Joseph has gotten better at his job. That could be a factor as well. He didn't have much help, though, on the offensive side of the ball. The quarterbacks that they had, not very good. Trevor Siemian started 10 games, went 5-5. Brock Osweiler was 0-4. He was a first-round pick. Paxton Lynch was a first-round pick. I think both these guys were actually first-round picks. Maybe, I don't know. 0-2 for Paxton Lynch, and then Case Keenum, 6-10. The fact that Case Keenum started an entire season in 2018 is kind of crazy. Look, Vance Joseph is a great defensive coordinator. And sometimes that's all you are. Sometimes coordinators are being great at being coordinators. And sometimes those coordinators aren't great at being head coaches. And that is a worry for me with Joseph. I do know there was a relationship between Joseph and Shane. They worked together in Miami when he was that defensive coordinator for that lone season. I think it was in 2016. We showed you earlier. So there could be maybe Joe Schoen pulling and pushing for Joseph to get that job. But Shane told us yesterday, ownership will ultimately make the decision on the head coach. It'll be very important if Joseph is the guy that wins this search and becomes the next head coach of the New York Giants to figure out what his plan is going to be on the offensive side of the ball. Even though it didn't go well in Denver on defense, they were still a top 13 unit, and I think if he came to the Giants would be good on defense. I don't have any worry about that. I do worry about what they would be able to do on offense. They could bring Davis Webb, though, former New York Giant, to come and be the offensive coordinator. There are rumors out there that if Joseph gets the job, he will pry away Davis Webb from Denver, and he will be the offensive coordinator of that team. 2 more candidates to talk about, but I want to hear from you first in the comments section. A, B, C, D, or F. What is your grade for Vance Joseph as the head coach candidate for the New York Giants? It also sounds like Kliff Kingsbury is going to get an interview with the Giants as he no longer has a job. Adam Schefter reporting Commanders offensive coordinator Kliff Kingsbury is leaving the organization to pursue other opportunities. Kingsbury and Dan Quinn met today and agreed to part ways mutually. I had heard there was a disagreement about how the Commanders wanted to move forward on the offensive side of the ball and how they wanted to operate when it comes to the running percentage and the passing percentage and what the future of Jaden Daniels looked like. On the heels of that, Jordan Schultz reporting sources say Kliff Kingsbury is expected to interview with the Giants and Titans, among others, for their head coaching position. So it sounds like Kingsbury is going to get a shot to be the head coach for this football team, at least according to Jordan Schultz. It's been a long track record for Kingsbury. Started out as the offensive quality control coach for the University of Houston. Then he got upgraded to the QB coach. And then his career, it hit a rocket ship. At Houston, the co-offensive coordinator did such a good job there. He went to Texas A&M. He then worked with Johnny Manziel, won a Heisman, and then 1 year later became the head coach at Texas Tech. Worked with Patrick Mahomes there as well. Then spent 4 seasons as the head coach for the Arizona Cardinals, a senior offensive analyst for USC after that, and for the last 2 seasons, he's been the play caller for the Washington Commanders. In 2024, it was awesome for Washington. It was awesome for Jaden Daniels. They looked like the new powerhouse team in the NFC East. Young quarterback, young offensive coordinator, and a dominant defensive coordinator at the head coach spot in Dan Quinn. Top 5 in points per game last year. Top 3 in rushing yards per game. Top 17 in passing yards per game. They were money on third down. 6th best third down conversion rate. They were awesome in the red zone. 6th best red zone TD percentage. And then the offense kind of fell off a little bit. Still a really good rushing attack. I think that is important. We always talk about when you evaluate an offensive coordinator, what do they do with the quarterback? What do they do with the passing game? What type of run game can you create? That's important for me. But we also know that Jaden Daniels did get hurt. Still good in the red zone. I like to see that this year. Not as good in third down, and that's tough when Jaden Daniels only plays in 7 games. Daniels was awesome in the first year under Kliff Kingsbury, going 12-5 as a starter, completing 69% of his passes. Nice. And nearly 210 passing yards per game, 25 passing touchdowns to just 9 picks, and he picked up 891 yards on the ground, and he rushed in 6 touchdowns. In the 7 games, though, that he played this year, it wasn't nearly as good. The completion percentage falls off by almost 10 points. The passing yards per game goes down by almost 30 yards. And the passing touchdowns, interceptions, those go down obviously due to the amount of games played. And the rushing yards and rushing touchdowns are what they are. One of my biggest worries for Kliff Kingsbury is in year 1, it works out. In year 2, it kind of hits a stalemate. And it doesn't work out as well. And now we see in year 2, he and Dan Quinn, they weren't ready and willing to work together anymore. Kliff is an offensive coordinator. Kliff as an offensive coordinator is something that I would really be interested in. If you bring in one of these young defensive coordinators, whether it is a Shula or whether it is a mentor, could you bring in Kingsbury as the OC? I think he's interviewing for the head coach job, but I also think he will be interviewing for the offensive coordinator job in that said interview. I go back to what he did in Arizona when he was the head coach there. 5-10 the first year. They averaged 22.6 points per game, the 16th best in the NFL. Then they go 8-8. and they average 25.6 points per game. So the offense gets better from year 1 to year 2. And then they have their best season in the NFL under Kingsbury in 2021. They go 11-6. They make the playoffs. They do lose in the wild card round, but they are a top 11 offense, averaging 26.4 points per game. And then it fell off the train tracks at 4-13 and only averaging 20 points per game. I wanted to go take a look at what Kyler Murray did under Kingsbury and kind of compare with Kliff Kingsbury to without Kliff Kingsbury. He goes 25, 31, and 1 with Kliff, and then without him, he goes 13 and 7. Completion percentage, about the same. Passing yards per game goes down by 22 yards per game without Kliff. The passing touchdowns, over 17 games, goes down by 4 touchdowns without Kliff. The interceptions goes down as well, but the rushing yards and the impact of Kyler Murray being a dual-threat quarterback was a lot more prominent under Kliff. I also wonder if that is just with Kyler getting a little bit older. I have my worries about Kingsbury as a head coach. I don't worry about him as an offensive coordinator. I'd be interested severely, strongly, about him being the OC. But do I want him being the CEO of my football team? Do I want him overseeing the defense? Is he capable of overseeing the defense? There's a lot more on your plate when it comes to being a head coach outside of just X's and O's. I don't ever worry about him being an X's and O guy. I think he's a very bright and one of the brightest offensive minds in this league. I have a lot of worries about him being a head coach. We'll close out today's show taking a deep dive into Lou Anarumo, but you should go check out chatsports.com/NYG shirt so you can get this Giants shirt, which has a major sale going on right now. Was $45. Now it's $24.99. Take advantage of the deal. It's a bargain. You can only get it at chatsports.com/NYG shirt. That's chatsports.com/NYG shirt. Lou Anarumo is expected to interview, and I don't even mean to say expected. He is going to interview, as the New York Giants have requested permission to interview Anarumo. The way that works is it's more of, hey, we're going to interview Lou, and there's not really anything that you could do about it because it's not a lateral move. It would be an upgrade in job title. He was the Bengals defensive coordinator from 2019 to 2024, getting a signature win in the playoffs, beating the Kansas City Chiefs to get to the Super Bowl. He was actually interviewed to be the Giants head coach back in 2022 when they hired Brian Daboll, and he worked with the Giants back in 2018 as their DB coach. A lot of ties between Anarumo, the Giants, and Joe Schoen. Dan Duggan, this tweet back in November saying about Anarumo, he worked for the organization, has friends in high places within the organization, was on the radar in 2022, has a strong connection to Joe Schoen dating back to their days in Miami, and Schoen hired Anarumo's son as a scout. And he's a local guy. So there is that. You look at the defense and what he's been able to do as a defensive coordinator. In the 1 year he was the DC in Miami, they allowed the 19th most points per game. Then he went to Cincinnati, and they had the 25th best scoring defense, then 22nd, then 17th, then 6th, then 21st, and 25th. 5 weeks ago, the Colts had a top 9 scoring defense, and then they crumbled at the end of the season. Injuries to Sauce Gardner, injuries to Charvarius Ward. I get it, but from weeks 14 to week 18, that defense allowed 32.6 points per game. He is a coach that over the last 2 years, and 3 out of the last 4 years, was top 10 in takeaways. And that means something to me. Can you take the football away? I think a lot of times that could be looked at as luck, but I think that is a skill of a defensive coordinator. It didn't start that way, though. 29th in takeaways, 28th, 27th, then 17th, then 8th, then 12th, then 7th, then 10th. So 4 years in a row, his defenses were top 12 in taking the football away. We spent a lot of time talking about Lou Anarumo as a potential head coach for the New York Giants because we have known that he was someone that the Giants are interested in, and he is interested in this job, and my take has not changed. He is last on my list of any name that has been mentioned up to this point. I'm not interested in him being the head coach because I think the only reason he would be the head coach is because he's worked here. He has people that he is friendly with that work here. He is friends with Joe Schoen. His son is a scout in this organization, and he's from the area. I'm sorry. Connections to the organization is last on my list of who I want to be the head coach. It just is. I have no interest in Lou Anarumo being the head coach of this football team. What say you? If you had to pick one of these three head coaches to be the next guy for our New York Football Giants, who would it be? Vance Joseph, Kingsbury, or Lou Anarumo? For me, I'm typing none. N-O-N-E. I don't want any of these three guys. I'd be pretty upset if any of these three guys got the job. If they did, I'll convince myself they were the right guy. I will root for them, and I will pound the table for them because they are my head coach. But if I was running this search, neither of these three gentlemen would even come close to my finalists of head coach candidates. Make sure you are following me on social media because when news breaks around this head coach search, I will break it down on my Twitter and on my Instagram. So give me a follow at @MarshallGreen_.